Welcome in, everybody. It's time for another edition of The Night Before. Kip Keefer and the First Lady of SEC Football, Terry Quillian. Terry, this was actually the night before. There is an SEC game on Saturday. It's the Las Vegas Bowl. Do you think there's ever been a gator ever sighted in the city of Las Vegas? There'll be a whole bunch of them tomorrow.
I think gators and Las Vegas go together really well.
Yeah, not a lot of water there. I think that might. Well, the Bellagio Fountain would be a good place if you're a gator to go. Yeah,
Exactly.
that would be kind of high rent district for the average gator. But Florida's had a lot of players opt out, and I think that's a big topic of conversation today on this edition night before. And as you can probably tell by my voice, I'm kind of playing hurt. I've been a little under the weather this week, so please bear with me. I know most of you would rather hear Terry talk than me anyway, so that's how we're going to try to strategize here today. But Terry, Anthony Richardson, that's a good place to start. He is not playing in Las Vegas. He is going to the NFL. And that's a strange decision for me because I can't believe people are encouraging him to jump. Looking at his inconsistent play all year, I just don't think he's quite ready.
Yeah, my feeling about Anthony Richardson is not that it's terrible for a player that's in a non-CFP playoff bowl game to choose out of what is kind of a meaningless bowl game. I can actually understand that. What I don't understand is Anthony Richardson thinking that this is the best, most lucrative time for him to go to the NFL. I am with you. It seems like, especially with Billy Napier getting, one more year there as head coach, one more year under his belt, that AR would have been much better served to have a senior year and have some better statistics, frankly, to bring into the NFL. Also, there are plenty of star quarterbacks entering the NFL this season. I'm not sure where Anthony Richardson falls in that list.
Yeah, I mean, he would be drafted by any team as a project, but I don't know. Remember the brilliant words of Brock Osweiler, our favorite color man on the Florida State game. He says, right. Anthony Richardson has been up and down all season, and that results in inconsistency. That was about the most brilliant. I mean, what a genius. And that's sized up the problem with him jumping now. But, Terry, you pointed me in the direction. I knew the receiver Jackson Smith, and you were much better in international dialect to try and get that second part of his last name than I. But I had heard he was not going to play despite being declared healthy now for Ohio State. And you come across a couple more players for the Buckeyes that are opting out of the playoff game. That's insane.
Yeah, I find it's really weird. So you have Jackson Smith, who's his last name I can't say, Nigba, who's a wide receiver. He had been injured, but he is now perfectly healthy enough to play. He's a starter on their team, and he's not playing so that he does not get hurt ahead of the NFL draft. But that's not as big a deal as wait for this one, Kip. Okay, I can't say this gentleman's first name, so I'm not going to even try. His last name is Mitchell. He's a linebacker. Kip, he is a team captain, and he is opting out of the playoff game. A team captain. Well, obviously, the word team doesn't mean anything to him as a team captain.
Not at all. And you actually came across some material from not only people in college football, but even professional scouts and agents and different people. Mm-hmm. They are universal in saying this is a terrible decision by these young men to turn their back on their teams. It's probably going to hurt their draft stock because it immediately calls their character into question.
Well, what I find is really interesting is, okay, so Ohio State has these two high-profile players opting out, and they're playing against number one Georgia, who has no players opting out. Wait for it. We have a kid in the transfer portal still playing. We have nobody that's opting out so far. This can change between now and the 31st. But definitely don't have any starters opting out of the game. I question if it'll really hurt their NFL draft stock. And here's why, Kip. The NFL is a completely transactional league.
Right.
There is nothing about team spirit in the NFL. This year, 2022, more so than ever, it is clearly a transactional league. And I frankly don't think those teams care at all about whether a kid is selfish about keeping himself out to not get hurt in a college football game. I could be wrong, but I don't think the NFL cares one whit. I think another college team might care, but I don't think the NFL cares. So if you're trying to not get hurt to preserve your draft stock status, I don't think that's going to affect it. I mean, my goodness, the NFL has everybody right up to people that are charged with homicide, and they'll still be playing in the games on Sunday until the time that they are convicted. So I don't think the NFL cares about character, period.
Well, I will interject this. A big part of the NFL Combine now is battering the aspiring professional prospect for your team with all kinds of personality analysis and different things on to determine. I don't know. There's probably a buzzword for that kind of testing that I'm failing to grasp here. But there's a lot of psychological stuff involved in the process now because teams don't want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in a guy who is not going to be a reliable and enthusiastic participant in what their program is.
Right. But Kip, you just said the important thing. So reliable, enthusiastic participant, what they really don't want, I don't think that's what they want. I think they're worried about them being reliable. I don't think they care about enthusiastic. In the NFL, you're paid to play. You're going to practice. You're going to do those things. I think they want to make sure that they don't have people that they are going to lose on their roster due to drug issues or criminal behavior. Right. And I don't think opting out of a playoff game to preserve your draft status and your body in any way is going to give somebody an idea that you're going to be more capable of committing a crime or more likely to turn into a drug addict. I really think those are the things they're looking at. I think they're also trying to figure out, does this person have the intellectual wherewithal to be able to understand an NFL playbook, which is obviously much more complicated than a college football playbook is. I mean, that was one of the raps against Tim Tebow, who everybody knows I love. So Gator Nation, don't get mad at me. I love Tim Tebow, and I think Tim Tebow should be playing in the NFL. But one of the things that kept coming up was that his dyslexia made it hard for him to comprehend an NFL playbook. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was one of the big things that you heard. And nobody could have better intangibles otherwise in the whole world than Tim Tebow. Nobody before or since can have better intangibles than that man.
That's for certain. It's fascinating. I guess the other thing maybe that those tests are trying to derive is there's such a big concern about how guys are going to blend with teammates and
right.
They don't want a cancer personality in the locker room, for lack of a better term. So I guess a lot of that makes sense because it is, at the end of the day, a professional sport and all the participants are compensated. But these days, college football is a lot like that too. So I think we're in a period of kind of redefinition of the whole process, but I still find it astounding that 3 players off the Ohio State roster who are able to play are not going to participate.
See, that I can't imagine. I can't believe. I can understand not playing if you're in one of the minor bowl games and you think you're going to go on a high round in the NFL. I think that's really kind of crummy to do to your teammates, but I do understand it. I understand it as a business decision. What I don't understand is your team is in the playoff for the national championship and you're not playing. Dude, I mean, I'm sorry, but what a jerk. And I think some of that, you've got to look back at the coach, because I think that has to do with the kind of attitude that the team has had. Georgia has been known all of last season, the 2021 National Football Champions were known for being an absolutely no-name team first team. to the point that at the NFL Combine, I think you and I talked about it on the show, Kip, they had players that were staying up to an hour and a half to 2 hours after they were finished at the Combine to watch their teammates at the Combine, and so that they could all leave as a group together. I mean, that's a lot of togetherness. And we keep hearing stories that this year's team is exactly the same, which is why it doesn't surprise me that you see no names of opt-outs in Georgia for the college football playoff game. I mean, isn't this what you play college football for? Are we really turning college football into just a minor league of the NFL? That's sad to me if that's the case. And really, Ohio State is the only place that you see that happening big time for the NFL. You can see a lot of people, like Alabama has a lot of players not playing in the Sugar Bowl, but these guys are pretty much, for the most part, all transfer portal guys versus protecting themselves for the NFL. And I think that's just part of what the situation is with the portal. That's just going to be the case when you have the transfer portal. Alabama has an overwhelmingly large number of players that are not playing in what is actually a really big bowl game because of the transfer portal. But I still think that's a different situation. Florida has a lot not playing too, although they're not exactly in a major bowl game there in Vegas.
Well, let's talk about you just mentioned Alabama, and they do have reportedly right now 13 players transferring in the portal. We talked about it on the morning after.
They got some big names there right now. I mean, definitely. At the wide receiver position, they got three guys. One guy only played, Christian Leary only played on special teams, so that's really not that big deal. But Holder and JoJo Earl going now to TCU.
Those are two guys that really logged a lot of time at wide receiver. And, I thought Earl throughout the season got better and better. And Holder making a couple big catches, too, for them. But the Empire...
Wait. A couple of big catches? Holder had 6 TDs, Kip.
Wow. Well, that's a lot more than a couple big catches. So thank you for correcting me.
331 yards and 6 TDs, and he's going to Oregon? I don't understand that.
Yeah. We did have a caller on the show Sunday that said Holder was kind of a problem, and a lot of people are privately saying they're glad to see him go. It's just, we don't know all the mitigating circumstances and everything that's going on in these programs, but this freedom to just jump ship is something we're all going to have to get used to.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because Alabama on the plus side right now is sitting with the number one recruiting team for 2023, which is phenomenally great news.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Nick Saban he's not sitting idle by. Yeah.
Yeah, they got a lot of guys opting out, so they got a big hole that they need to fill there. I think probably their number one guy that they've got that's the biggest news is Keon Keeley, who is, big in so many ways. My God, he's 6'6" and 242 pounds. That is truly a catch. Coming out of Florida, that's a big deal that they've got.
Yep. So Nick Saban isn't just sitting on his hands. The Empire is striking back. He is leading in all. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, clearly the recruits do not feel that Nick Saban's time at Alabama is coming to a close.
No, and you had seen some comments that they're convinced that Nick Saban is there for the long haul, that this isn't just going to be a couple more years and done. Assuming Nick Saban's health stays intact, I don't think Nick Saban has any intention of retiring to the Lake Burton house over in Georgia.
No, I don't think he does. But here's the good news for Nick in recruiting. It kind of doesn't matter, even if recruits think he might not be there for all 3 or 4 years that they are. Because guess what? Unlike days of old, when they would have been recruited to play for Nick Saban and then Nick Saban is gone. If you're there and Saban's leaving and you're not thrilled with the guy coming in, guess what you do? you're going to just put your name in the transfer portal and go
Oh,
somewhere that
yeah,
you're happier with the coach.
of course. And I think we talked about it last Sunday that when you're signing nothing but 4 and 5 star guys, not everybody can play. So some of those guys are going to get beat out, and now they've got an option instead of just standing on the sideline for the next couple 3 years. They can move on to other places, and I mean, I guess your window to be a college football player is limited. You sure don't want to spend it on the bench,
Right.
even if it's justified. So I understand why kids are wanting to do that, but I mean, there's already 1,000 in this preliminary portal. We might have as many the predictions of 2,500, 3,000 before it's all over here in the spring.
I think
That's a lot of players.
It's a lot of players, but interestingly, it's not a lot of big name players.
Yeah, that's right.
There are
That's
limited
right.
number of Power Five really big name players that are in the portal. And I think that number, Kip, includes players, I could be wrong, tell me, because you're the Obi-Wan Kenobi of football here. I think that includes players from below the Power Five ranks as well.
Yeah, it's all divisions of NCAA teams. Terry, as much as we've heard about Alabama's recruits and the fact that Nick Saban and all the services is ranked #1 with Alabama, I Googled today and I looked for information on Auburn's preliminary recruiting success, and I didn't find any stories about that. Awfully quiet on the Plains. If Hugh Freeze has charged into the wall full speed to start off with, it's not being noticed by anyone.
Except that what Hugh Freeze is doing, and I have not been a fan of Hugh Freeze. He has been really active in the transfer portal, and
yeah, well, that's where he needs to be.
Yeah, he's being really successful there in the transfer portal. And so I think, in a way, if you look at what's there at Auburn, yeah, you want a big recruiting class, but you also need some guys that can play right now. And, he's got some big name guys, and he's got like Grayson McCall coming in that's visiting this week. He hasn't done a bad job, actually, in the portal, which is, potentially where he's seeing he has to go. I think it's really hard to come in and make a big splash on the recruiting side when you're starting from scratch. I also don't think it helps that he's bringing all of his flipping Liberty assistants with him. I mean, maybe if he had hired some big name SEC coordinators, he would be doing better in the recruiting process because those guys would already know the kids and be in the loop. But I think part of the lack of success in recruiting, Kip, I mean, what do you think when he brings his whole Liberty staff with him?
Yeah, and I haven't read, I don't know enough about those guys' backgrounds. I'm sure some of them have some SEC experience, but
not much. I can tell you, I've looked.
Yeah, it seems to me. Okay. Well, it seems to me that if you're a coach in a new situation, you want to surround yourself with the ultimate staff of experts in every aspect of the operation, particularly recruiting, because it's the lifeblood of your program. Now, it has changed with the transfer portal, and when you were telling me that Hugh is already active there, it made me think about Deion Sanders, who declared that was his first stop. He was going to start working in the portal immediately when he got to Colorado. So I guess it's just a tough transition for old school fans like myself that it's not just recruiting high school kids now. It's trying to make your program attractive to guys that are already playing college football. It's a whole new world.
And, it's interesting because different coaches have different philosophies. Georgia does not use the transfer portal much. And part of the reason is when you're a team first team, you want to make sure that those guys you're bringing in the portal really do fit your style and fit what you're doing there at the team. I think it's different when you're a person like Deion, who's kind of building a team from scratch, because there sort of isn't much team chemistry there that you're going to be messing up. And it's almost the same kind of thing at Auburn too, really.
Well, isn't it, and you've heard Kirby say it repeatedly throughout the season, that we have a team that we didn't bring in any transfers. These are all kids we recruited that we got to know, all people that really wanted to be here and be part of this program. That's who we're putting on the field every week. And Kirby says that beaming with pride because it is a heck of an accomplishment for Kirby Smart to be in this position with all players that he basically recruited and signed and that they're proving out on the field. You can sign all the 5 stars you want, but if you don't develop them into effective players, you're not really finishing the drill. And Kirby Smart has delivered that the last couple of years and then some.
Absolutely. And I think that's what we all think of the Alabama team as being also. I do have to say, I would not blame Bryce Young at all if he were to opt out of the Sugar Bowl. Bryce has had to deal with injuries. He's had injury issues. He's projected right now to be the number 1 quarterback in the draft. And Jalen Milroe has played this year and shown that he can play this year. So given that it's not a CFP game, I would not be upset if I was an Alabama fan if Bryce Young decided that that game just wasn't going to work for him, because I feel like there really is a good chance for Bryce Young to get hurt in that game.
Yeah, Terry, I'm glad you brought up the Sugar Bowl, Alabama against Kansas State, and that's fine and good. Alabama's in the Sugar Bowl because they finished number 5. They lock up the tie-in bid to the Sugar Bowl that way. But I'm one of the things I'm going to like about the college football playoff expanding to 12 teams is in this circumstance, how much more compelling would a game in the Orange Bowl have been, at least to me, and tell me if you disagree. If Alabama and Clemson had been matched up in the Orange Bowl, just for fans, these have been the 2 most dominant programs until Georgia came on the scene the last couple of years.
And you know what? Even if it wasn't a playoff game, if it was just the Orange Bowl and it was Alabama versus Clemson, it would be more appealing. And it would also be much more of a grudge match between the 2 teams.
It'd be matching the 2 most successful programs of the last 20 years. And I just thought that was a natural. Instead, we get Tennessee and Clemson in the orangest Orange Bowl of all time. And we get Alabama, Kansas State. Tennessee fans would have been delighted to go to New Orleans. They haven't been there in decades. Right. Tennessee, Kansas State would have been an attractive game, but Alabama, Clemson would have been great. And that's where a lot of this tie-in automatic, you go here, you go there, is really not very smart from a marketing and promotion standpoint for college football. I think they really missed the boat there.
I don't even understand why it still exists, Kip, given that the whole bowl system has gotten upended with the college football playoff. I don't understand why you still have tie-ins at all. I don't really get that. I don't see how it serves the bowl, and I don't see how it serves the schools.
I agree. Okay, now I get a chance to pour out my soul here and have you react to this. Being in Birmingham, living about 3 miles from the Protective Stadium, which is brand new. It houses the entire USFL schedule. It's home to UAB, who's playing in the very first bowl game coming up on Saturday.
Yeah,
UAB, another phenomenal season. They'll play UTSA. That's a matchup between the Conference USA champs and the Sun Belt champ, which is UAB. So that's a great thing.
That's a great
my
matchup,
point is, the Birmingham Bowl, which has been a decent little success here in Birmingham in recent years because there was an SEC team always assigned here. Terry, my goodness, I have to register my strong displeasure with the matchup they've given us. And I don't know if people in Birmingham have anything to do with this or if this is just an ESPN deal. But in the Birmingham Bowl in a couple of weeks, we get East Carolina against Coastal Carolina. Are you kidding me? What a terrible matchup. If anybody in Birmingham want to go to that game, I sure don't.
No, that is actually a terrible, terrible matchup. And you wonder how that happens. Like how did the Birmingham Bowl get so screwed? Which it really is.
Yeah, it makes no sense. We had Auburn last year. Tennessee was here 2 years ago. I mean, that game.
A 50,000 seat stadium is not a bad stadium for a bowl game that's less than a New Year's Day bowl game. It's really not. It's not like the facility is not capable, because you can't tell me that at a lot of these mid and lower tier bowl games, they're getting more than 50,000 people there in the first place.
Well, and let's cut to the chase. This is the headquarters for the Southeastern Conference. And we have East Carolina and Coastal Carolina playing literally a block from the SEC offices in our bowl game. That's ridiculous.
It is absolutely ridiculous. And it's not like Birmingham is a bad location for a winter football game. I mean, I get that you've got a brand new stadium, you've got the SEC headquarters, and you're in a southern state, and you end up with two no-name Carolina teams playing each other. And I don't really see the Carolina people traveling to Birmingham for that game.
No, they're not going to be excited about that. Coastal's coach just left to take Hugh Freeze's place at Liberty, and their quarterback opted out and already declared for the NFL draft. So Coastal really limped to the finish line. Troy just destroyed them in the championship game for that conference. So it's not a very attractive matchup. I think East Carolina's about a 500 team. Terry, let's pivot to New Year's Eve day. We've got some exciting news on December 31st we want folks to know all about.
Yeah, on December 31st, we are going to be the lead-in. We're going to be actually doing the day of on the 31st, not the morning after, not the morning before, but the day of. Because on the 31st, we're going to be right here from 9 to 11. And we will be doing basically previewing the Sugar Bowl that we run right into, which starts right at 11 o'clock for Alabama fans. And then we got the two big CFP playoff games that evening. So it's going to be a great time, 9 to 11 on the 31st, right here on WJOX.
Yeah, we're excited about that opportunity. We can talk about what might happen instead of what did happen for a change. So that will be a lot of fun. And also this coming Sunday, it may be the holiday season, but Kip and Terry never take a day off. Well, next week on Christmas, we're going to. But we'll be on this Sunday, 9 o'clock on Jocks with the morning after.
Yeah, and there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening in Alabama in terms of recruiting news. We're going to know a lot more about opt-ins and opt-outs for these bowl games. So it's going to be a great show. We'll be right here next Sunday morning, 9 to 11.
We can't wait. Alabama, the epicenter of college football. We've got Alabama and Troy and South Alabama and UAB all in bowl games. Auburn will get fixed up, hopefully, and get back in the flow next year. We'll talk all about it on the morning after Sunday. The must-hear show in Birmingham, a staple on the Birmingham sports radio scene. Terry, it's been fun. We've kicked around a lot of different ideas here and given some opinions. I hope everybody enjoyed the program. And we will be back with you on the night before next week, right before your Christmas holidays. So looking forward to that.
Can't wait to see all of y'all then.
Have a good week, everybody, and a good football weekend. Thanks for listening.
From the sports betting capital of the world, Las Vegas, it's time for the show you can't afford to miss. The #1 weekly football preview, Wanna Bet. Get ready for valuable information, analysis, winning picks, and betting strategies. Your hosts, SEC gridiron guru Kip Keefer, and award-winning betting expert, writer, and sports editor for the Las Vegas Sun, Case Keefer. Let's go. Here's everything you need to win big. Wanna Bet.
It's time for another edition of Wanna Bet. We are glad you're on board. Welcome, everybody, to another football weekend. Kip Keefer, Case Keefer, at the what a location this is for us to be producing the show. We are at the Superbook at Westgate, Las Vegas, and you can see in the background just a fabulous facility. Really, I called it last week, Case, kind of the mecca for sports betting. Has been a long established area here, and they've continued to acclimate and update things. Just a great place for if you're into sports betting. Is there a better spot than this?
Yeah, I mean they kind of have everything here. A lot of times the sports books, they kind of have their clear strength. One place will have a great betting menu. One place will have a great place to watch games, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like this is one place where it really has all. You're going to to be able to put a fair bet down. You're going to feel welcome. It's a great place to watch games. This is really, I'd say, one of the few places, not to put anywhere else down, that really does it all.
Well, we're excited to be here, and we're excited to have you with us. I hope you saw the show last week. If not, you can go back and catch it on our Facebook page, which is Wanna Bet, just like the name of the show. If you're a Facebook subscriber, just simply log in and like that page, and you'll have access to all of our shows that we have. And we're also developing a YouTube channel to put the whole series up. I say that because we just got into the very beginnings of the discussion last week, Case, about analytics, which covers so many different areas. But I want to focus more specifically on an area that we were just starting to get into last week when we ran out of time, and have you describe kind of your process with all this data and all these numbers. First, remind people of sort of the sources of that, and then talk about specifically what your process each week in assessing matchups. What are the most important numbers, and just give us an overview of how you use all that information.
Well, the good thing is in this day and age, all these numbers are so easy to find. There's just so many websites, so much publicly available data that you really don't have to look too hard to find numbers for everything. College football, off the top of my head, I think it's collegefootballdata.com, literally has every single category you could ever think about everything. Now, some of it's unsorted, so you have to kind of work through it, and it's not going to be laid out nicely for you, but it has just, from anything you could think of, yards per rush attempt, all the way up to some of the more advanced analytics like expected points added per play, which is really kind of the gold standard of analytics these days, that really gives you an idea of how efficient a team is on an every play basis. And that's just college football. NFL, there's even more. I think last week I mentioned Football Outsiders, which to me is still the best of the best that kind of pioneered this space. Pro Football Focus is probably the biggest now. They have all the way granular down to how efficient every player is. Of course, they have the player grades, but even beyond that, they have other stuff of how good they are in every area. So you don't have to dig too hard. It's easy to find this stuff. I think where it's interesting, like you said, is how do you apply this to your handicapping? Because it can be a barrage, and you want to know how do I use what are the most important things to use. But there's just some really basic things you can do to kind of improve your approach and kind of get an idea of how good a team really is beyond kind of the noise and the randomness that can kind of happen in a single football game.
Well, just for example's sake, let's say, just to throw one out, let's say Texas is playing Oklahoma State. You look at you've got the information assembled for those. What specific areas do you use do you focus on one team first and then compare their strengths to the other team's weaknesses? How does that work?
I really like comparing the two, especially when you're trying to come up with a number of how two teams are going to play against each other. Like I said, there's so many different levels you could do, but I guess just to start, if you're just trying to make a small improvement on your handicapping and look how two teams go against each other, I'd say one of the more basic stats that everyone can start with, I think, can understand is yards per play and yards per play against. Now, why this is important is because it narrows it down. You're going to have 80 to 90 sometime on the high end trials in a game. There's going to be so many plays, and it's really important. These big stats don't mean anything. Like, who cares if someone throws for 500 yards if they threw 50 times a game? It doesn't mean as much than if you threw for 500 times if you threw for 500 yards, and you had 20 attempts. Really, looking at what a team does per play is going to give you the biggest sample and therefore give you the best idea of how they're performing. So maybe the best team in the nation will have like 8 yards per play, which would be ridiculous. Maybe their defense is bad, though, and they're giving up 6.5 yards per play. That's still a net yard per play of 1.5. We'll say that's Texas. I know the Longhorns haven't been that good in a long time, but who knows? Maybe it's coming with Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning. Then you can look at the other team and see maybe Oklahoma State. Maybe they have a good record. They've done good in close games, but if you really boil it down to a per play basis, maybe they're gaining 6.5 yards per play but giving up 6.6. Obviously, that's a negative. That means on a per play basis, they're giving up 0.01 more yards than they gained. Usually over the course of a season, that's going to even out. I know that might not have sounded so basic, but I'm trying to start with one of the more basic, kind of easy to understand concepts. I think that's where, looking at things on a more granular level, like a per play, is a good place to start if you're looking to get more into statistics, more into how teams perform the way they do.
Well, just to throw out a couple of examples, and I'll see if you really assign a lot of significance to these, but some that jump out at me that I think just as watching games are huge determining factors in outcomes are things like third down conversions and also red zone efficiency. And I guess the stats would tell you how teams are as far as defending those particular situations and how proficient other teams are in executing and having a high percentage of success. Are those stats that are really significant?
Well, right next to yards per play, I think the other super basic stat that's very important kind of ties into this. It's called success rate. It really helps you to know a team's success rate. So success rate defines a successful play by getting 50% of the needed yards on first down, 75% of the necessary yards on second down. So, of course, for example, if it's 1st and 10, you need to get 5 yards for it to be a successful play. And then 3rd or 4th down, you need to get 100%. You're needing to get a first down at that point. That's the traditional definition of success rate and kind of what's ingrained in football, the way you need to be going. So you need to look at these teams' success rate. It'll give you a really good idea of how, with mini trials, how they're performing. And you can just flip it right around and look on the defense, too. Red zone efficiency, I'd say there's a little bit more push and pull about it. Now, there's certainly some correlation that better teams will be better at red zone, but I tend to think there's a lot more randomness in red zone efficiency. There's so few trials. A lot of times I feel like a team, we see it all the time. There's a team that will really struggle in the red zone for half the year. We make a big deal about it. How will they fix this? The next half of the year, they're great. I think there's a lot of randomness in it. There is some correlation. I'm not saying there's none. But if I look at red zone and I see a team's doing terrible, I am less likely to be alarmed by that and more likely thinking they're getting unlucky and it'll turn around in time.
And again, this is also fascinating because just from all the numbers, and we'll visit this next week, but because we're out of time for this segment again. But what I really want to talk about next week is coaches themselves and the decisions they make and how you kind of weigh all that against the numbers. I know personalities come into it. This is a fascinating subject, and I hope you all are enjoying our discussion. We'll get back to it next week with more on Inside the Numbers here on Wanna Bet. For right now, we're going to find out how Case utilized those numbers this week. His best bets for college and pro football are coming up next. Stay right where you are.
Hey, it's Case Keefer back here on Wanna Bet for another week of my best bets, future positions, ramblings, whatever you get in here. Fired up after last week. If you remember, the big thing we were rooting for was Caleb Williams to hold on and win the Heisman. Had him at 15-1. So luckily that came through. Probably wasn't any reason to sweat anyway, but glad that came through. Didn't have any college action, but gave out Alabama -3 and TCU +8.5 in a couple bowl games further down the road, and those have since kind of moved in our favor. I think Alabama is now more a consensus 3.5. TCU briefly touched 7, now mostly 7.5. So looking forward to those two bigger bowl games at the end. But we'll get into some more immediate games here in a little bit, as well as 3 NFL picks as always. And the next big future position on the horizon, as nice as it was to hit Caleb Williams and kind of come through in what's been a little bit of a disappointing college football season. It would be so much sweeter if we can get Patrick Mahomes in as MVP, because, of course, I gave that out on Wanna Bet, so hopefully some people took my advice and we can cash that together at the end of the NFL season. He was 10-1 at the time we recorded a couple weeks before the season. And, maybe I got a little bit too cocky because for weeks now he had been a big favorite, minus money, odds-on favorite. And all of a sudden that week, after last week's games, that's flipped. Jalen Hurts, now the favorite. Patrick Mahomes, you can find somewhere around 2-1 or so. Obviously, if you're with me from the beginning and you bet 10-1 like I did, I wouldn't recommend betting 2-1 now. But if you have no position in this MVP market and you still want to get in and have a sweat, I actually still think Patrick Mahomes is a good bet at 2-1. I get why Jalen Hurts is the favorite. If you look at the history of this award, a lot of times if there's a team as good as the Eagles are this year that are going to be, I think 16-2 or 15-2, could maybe be 16-1. Usually it goes to the quarterback on those teams, but I feel like the voter base has just gotten a little bit smarter in recent years. I feel like there's a lot more statistical influence in this. And I think when you really take a step back and look at it, and I love Jalen Hurts, I think he deserves consideration. He's had an amazing year, only 3 interceptions, but there's just no one more valuable than Patrick Mahomes, and you cannot convince me otherwise. And numerically, you can't make a case otherwise either. I mean, what he's doing this year from an advanced numbers perspective is just basically unprecedented. And even conventional stats, I mean, he's on pace right now. I think as of right now, he would fall 4 yards short of setting the passing record. But in other words, it's about a coin flip. It could happen, it could not. He's got a pretty easy schedule the rest of the way. Of course, part of the reason he dropped this week is he had 3 interceptions against the Broncos, who are at the bottom of the standings, but the Broncos' pass defense is actually very good. I think this is a little bit of drastic to switch him and Hurts that much. He does have another game with the Broncos left, Mahomes that is, but that one's in Kansas City. The Chiefs are going to be favored in all these games. Coming down the wire. The Bills are currently the 1 seed in the AFC, but the Chiefs have an easier schedule. So if the Bills fall off, the Chiefs keep putting up the offensive numbers they have all year, they'll be the number 1 seed. Mahomes with a chance at the passing yards record. I still think this is really close between Mahomes and Hurts, and to be able to get 2-1 on Patrick Mahomes, that's still a bet I would recommend if you don't have a pre-existing position in that market like I do, and I hope some of you do. But anyway, that's some talk on futures. I like to get into it when it's makes sense, and I thought this week presented an opportunity. But let's get in to 3 bets in college football, 3 bets in the NFL, and you can check out my picks on every game, both in NFL and the bowl season, on LasVegasSun.com. I'm going to kind of try to go with the same schedule as I do on my column in the show, just to make things easier. It might make it mean that we miss some games, but I've got the first 12 games handicapped pretty in depth on LasVegasSun.com, so I'm going to pick out of that pool for these first 3. And let's go ahead and just start on Saturday here in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Bowl. You have Oregon State against Florida, and I'm going to lay the big price with Oregon State -10. I would not go higher than 10. I actually bet this quite a lot shorter when the numbers first came out, but I would expect Oregon State to beat Florida by probably a touchdown or a little more, even during the regular season when they had their full teams. And right now, only one side has their full team, and that's not the Gators. That's Oregon State. Florida had so many guys transfer out. They're down to Jack Miller at quarterback, of course, as Anthony Richardson gets ready for the draft. Oregon State is one of the most experienced teams in the country. They were 10-2 against the spread this year. Never really got enough respect by the market. I think we cashed on them once here, if not twice. It does get tough when you get into those double digits, and Florida has some backdoor potential, but I think now that it's settled at 10, I think Oregon State, is safe at -10. And one more big favorite, let's go to the Frisco Bowl in Frisco, Texas, of course. I'm going to take Boise State -10.5 against North Texas. This Boise State defense is very, very good, and I think they are going to be kind of a culture shock for Austin on, and the Mean Green Conference USA was not known for very good defense this year. I think that Boise State's defense is going to be a level above, and also the Broncos don't throw the ball very well, but they run extremely well, and North Texas had one of the worst rush defenses in the nation. Just looks like mismatches all over the place to me here, so I'm going to take Boise State -10.5 and a dog to wrap us up all the way on next Wednesday in the New Orleans Bowl at the Superdome. I'm going to take Western Kentucky +4.5. Austin Reed, their prolific quarterback, had announced he was going to the transfer portal. And then I actually love to see this. I feel like it hasn't happened in the last few years, but Western Kentucky somehow scrambled together and got a gigantic NIL package to keep him there, or else he was certainly destined for a Power 5 program. The line did move when it announced that he came out of the transfer portal and was staying with the Hilltoppers, but only moved 3 points, and I really don't think that's enough. South Alabama's the better team here from top to bottom, but they're not used to this type of aerial attack, and I think the best player on the field is going to be Reed. I think he's worth more than 3 points to the spread, in my opinion. Western Kentucky did lose some other guys, but I think Western Kentucky +4.5 is a good one there. Let's go 3 quick NFL ones to wrap us up. I'm going to go with Denver -2.5. Hosting Arizona. I mean, if you're watching the in-season Hard Knocks, you've seen just how bad, an up-close view of how bad this Cardinal situation has gotten. Now it's going to be even worse with Kyler Murray out for the year with that torn ACL. Injuries all over the place. Denver's defense, as I already alluded to, I'm always impressed with, so I think them only laying 2.5 is a little short. Then both the primetime games, actually probably the games I like the most this week, Washington -4.5, hosting the Giants. I was on the Giants 2 weeks ago, I think probably even on the show, +2.5 here, and they got the 2020 tie. I think they were fortunate to do that. I really think I got lucky there. The Commanders outplayed them, and this is only a 2-point adjustment for home field advantage, which is kind of the standard. I think with the situation the Commanders are in, coming off of a game against them where they outplayed them and a bye week, I think it should be more than this. I think maybe this should be approaching 6. So Washington minus 4.5, and then Monday Night Football, give me the Rams plus 7 at the Packers. As bad as the Rams have been, their defense is still really good. We've seen the Packers' offensive issues, and I think the Rams' offense is going to be a little bit better with Baker Mayfield as well. This number has really crashed. I bet it at 9.5, I think, on Sunday night, now all the way down to 7. But as long as you can get 7, I think the Rams are good. Just don't go below 7. So Rams plus 7, Commanders minus 4.5, Broncos minus 2.5. Those are the NFL plays for this week. Stick around for Kip's segment next.
Hello again, everybody. Kip Keefer now to step in with your SEC early bowl game forecast and selections. Bear with me today. I'm playing a little bit hurt. A flu bug has affected my voice, obviously, so we'll soldier on and give you the best report possible here today on the program. Today, in fact, starts the bowl season for the SEC. 11 of the 14 teams are in the postseason. That's a remarkable accomplishment for the league. Only 3 teams sitting at home, those being Vanderbilt, Texas A&M, and Auburn. All the rest of the league is in action, and the Florida Gators kick it off today. Has there ever been a Gator ever seen in the city of Las Vegas? I seriously doubt that. Today there will be a whole bunch of them as the Florida Gators come to town and play the Pac-12 representative Oregon State Beavers. Now, Oregon State finished the season on a resounding high note when they stomped their arch-rival, in-state rival, Oregon, in the second half and just completely dominated that game on the ground, not even throwing the football, as Oregon State stormed back and knocked Oregon out of playoff contention. With that win, denied them a chance to play USC in the Pac-12 championship game. And we know Utah got that opportunity and made the most of it as they battered the Trojans in the championship game, ironically, right in Las Vegas, where the game is being played today between Florida and Oregon State. Now, on paper, Oregon State looks a lot better equipped for this game. They have less opt-outs. That's going to be hard to say. I got to get used to that during the season. Opt-outs than Florida. Anthony Richardson, the star quarterback, has already declared for the NFL draft. He will not be playing. Several other key players for Florida missing. But the Gators' talent pool a lot deeper, I think, than Oregon State, a team that did not play that well when they got away from their home in Corvallis, Oregon. So I really think the Gators will hang here. I think guys get a chance to play that we haven't seen a whole lot of. Miller, the third-string quarterback, will be at the controls, and a big opportunity for that young man who was highly recruited. So we'll find out if this theory's right. But I'm going to take the double digits and the Florida Gators for our first pick of SEC bowl season. The next game we're going to turn to is later in the week. It is the game in Tampa, Florida, the Gasparilla Bowl between Missouri and their opponent, Wake Forest. These are 2 similar teams in terms of their seasons. They had some high points, but they had more probably low points, and both come in really needing a win to put a exclamation point on their respective seasons. Missouri, pretty scrappy all season and made huge strides in improving what was just a horrible defense in 2021. And that has kept Missouri in a lot of games. They should have won several games that they lost. But I like the way this team's playing. I think Coach Eli Drinkwitz has them going in the right direction. Wake Forest was spectacular early in the season with a high-octane offense, but they really fell off as the season went on. And I think they are primed to meet a Missouri team that's going to be the more determined unit. So once again, I might be the ultimate SEC homer, but I'm sticking with the SEC again. Give me Missouri and give the 1.5 to Wake Forest. The other 2 kind of early games, but in the week, or I should say just the days following Christmas,
involve Arkansas, and they will go to Memphis to play in the Liberty Bowl against the Kansas Jayhawks. Now, the original teams invited to this game were Kansas and their arch rival Missouri, who, because of league affiliations changing, do not play now on a regular basis after playing for many, many years in a rivalry that literally goes back to the Civil War, and that wasn't the football variety, that was the actual war variety. Kansas and Missouri were basically in armed conflict with one another throughout the Civil War, so that rivalry runs deep. Missouri declined to go to the Liberty Bowl, favoring the Gasparilla that we just mentioned, so Arkansas got that spot to play the Jayhawks. And I think the Hogs have something to prove. If we go all the way back to the beginning of the season, I told you at that time that Arkansas was 7.5 wins. Over-under was the prediction for their season. I told you to go under, not because I didn't think Arkansas was going to be good and had a lot of talented players, but their schedule was just brutal. I think this month off and some of the opportunity to heal up some of their key players, they don't have many guys opting out of this game, and I just think that Arkansas is primed to make a big effort against an overachieving Kansas team who will be very excited to be in this game. I just don't know that Kansas has the horses to control the Arkansas Razorbacks at the end of the day. So I'm going to give the 3 points and take the Razorbacks and keep this SEC slate all SEC so far. Will we stay the same in our last game, the Texas Bowl? It is going to be Ole Miss traveling to the Lone Star State to play the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Texas Tech was a very competitive outfit throughout the year, but down the stretch they started to show some weaknesses as attrition set in. It happens a lot of times with teams that aren't very deep, and I thought Texas Tech wore down as the season went on, were not as competitive a team as they were early. On the other hand, Ole Miss at one time late in the season was still a top 10 team until they ran into Alabama and lost a heartbreaker at home in Oxford, and they finished off the season at home against Mississippi State in what turned out to be Coach Mike Leach's last game at the helm of the Bulldogs. Mississippi State, an inspired effort to upset the Rebels and really kind of make their season look rather ordinary at 8-4, when it at one time had spectacular opportunities to be something far more successful. Look for Quinshon Judkins, the freshman of the year in the SEC. He got a little nicked up down the stretch. He'll be 100%. And Jackson Dart, their quarterback, is very good. Lane Kiffin staying on, turning down offers. He's back as Ole Miss coach. And I think the Rebels are going to rise up and have a big game in the Texas Bowl against Texas Tech. Take Ole Miss minus the 3.5. So we have all SEC teams in our picks. Again, call me a homer, but I really like the league in these first 4 matchups. That's all we got for this week. I hope you're having a fabulous holiday season. We will join you again for the New Year's previews coming up in just a couple of weeks.